Welcome everyone to another episode of Spill the Marketing Beans. I'm very excited because today we have Mark Thomas with us, Head of Growth of Powered by Surge. I know he's someone whose name always popped up if you are constantly someone who's scrolling through Twitter about influencing, marketing influencers that you should hear from. And I'm so glad you made the time for us today, Mark. Thank you for being on today's episode. I'm very excited to talk to you about all things demand gen.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I know, Mark, you mentioned before that, you worked at companies of all different sizes. And maybe we could start from, companies that are like an early stage that's trying to figure out their B2B demand gen strategies. So, okay, if it was you, how do you get started putting that demand gen strategy together for like an early stage company that you are a part of?
Sure. Well, I think first things first is with any demand gen work, you have to be sure that there is a problem that you're solving. All demand gen work actually comes from the basis of, hey, I've got a problem, I need to solve it, I'm going to go off and find a solution. A lot of companies actually fail not because they're doing badly with demand gen, but because they didn't do the first step, which was, hey, let's validate that we have a problem to solve for this customer, right? So that's the start. So to do that, you just need to go off and speak to potential customers in a way which doesn't lead them onto, hey, I want to buy your product, or you don't want to pitch them at that point. You want to say, hey, how do we solve the problem that you actually have? What does it look like for you? What are the express pains of your kind of broad problem? And then you go off and you think, hey, does our product align to those pains? If not, is there something we need to change? Yeah. Or do we need a different customer if we're hearing the same thing from many different people? That's how I'd start. Let's assume you've done that though, because most companies who get to the point where they think about how do we build demand will at least do some validation. From there, what you really want to do is you want to say, okay, well, let's think about those pains that we're solving. How do we solve those pains practically? So to do this, I recommend people write down a series of about 4 or 5 value props. So value propositions. The framework that I use for doing that is to think, 1, what's the pain? What's the problem that they're feeling? Express it quickly, specifically, do it in a couple of words, probably, maybe a sentence or maximum 2.
Right.
Then what's the implication of that? So that pain obviously causes them some kind of tangible impact in their business, most likely. Express that quickly, clearly, concisely. The third thing is, for each one of those pains and solutions, you should be able to say, okay, well, here is how we solve using our product that pain and implication that are tied together. And then fourth, you want to say, okay, well, here's the benefit if you use our product to solve this pain. Take that 4-sentence thing that you've got there, and you can express that clearly and concisely in probably maximum 2 sentences as what I call a value prop. You get 4 or 5 of those, that forms the basis for the rest of your strategy.
Nice. So, okay, I did not, expect for you to like break down that whole process of building a value proposition. So thank you for that. So now, okay, we figured that out. What comes next when, say, for an example, someone like me, like a product marketer, has to work with like a demand gen person, or sometimes in companies, I would be that person who would have to think of it with whoever that helps with marketing. Then where do I go to figure out what's next?
Sure. Well, okay. So the next thing to do would be to say, okay, I've got those value props, right?
Yeah.
And this is probably sounding really foundational for some people who are watching and listening. It's just fair to say that it is foundational, but a lot of people miss it. The thing to do next, and this is a real crucial step, is to test that message, test those value propositions. How I recommend people do this is to go to, let's say, 5 to 10 people who have the problem that you are trying to solve. Just find their email addresses or call them up and say, hey, I'm working on a product that solves that addresses X problem, so the problem you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
From talking to people, we saw that X, Y, and Z, where X, Y, and Z are the pains that they have. So we built a product and then do the value propositions, and then say, does this interest you at all?
Yeah.
Now, what you get from there is you get people that you want to leave it open so that people will give you feedback that is open as well. So don't say, do you want to buy my product? Because that's asking for a commitment.
Yeah.
Say instead, does this sound interesting to you? Or does that reflect your experience? Things like that. Because people will go off and talk to you more, and that will give you better insight into whether you're on the right message in order to go off and later on build out things like SEO, your landing pages, PPC, social outreach, all of that kind of stuff. This foundational work gets passed over so frequently, and ultimately it kills the return on investment in marketing for everyone involved.
So I would like to kind of draw in with like some of your personal experiences as well, Mark. I know that, in some of the, companies that you've co-founded back in the day, or even like for Powered by Search, I know there's like a lot of cool content focused, platforms that you've like built to sort of, push those companies as well. So maybe walk us through what kind of demand gen strategies that has worked. Maybe we can talk about both, the early stage companies that you worked, as well as, like the big time ones.
Sure. Well, let's talk about, firstly, in 2015, I co-founded a company called Dupol. It was a survey tool. And basically it gave people the tool to build real-time voting into many processes: customer satisfaction, employee engagement, live events, that kind of thing. We had a business model that was basically a customer who was very horizontal. It could have been anyone from like a Fortune 500 company down to an individual trying to build a business.
Right.
That's a total nightmare, by the way, for marketing. Yeah. I would not recommend that to anyone. I've got the pains to show that it's a problem. For a long time, we kind of did this thing where we would say, with a general kind of value proposition. So it would be like, grow your organization by understanding your customer, right? Now, that sounds fine for a marketer because you think, hey, that covers all the bases, right? Grow your organization by understanding your customer.
Yeah.
In reality, what happens is people look at that and they say, that doesn't speak to me at all, because you could literally be selling me anything. I have no idea what this product is, right? So one thing that really worked when we realized that was a problem is we took the landing pages that we were putting out, and we basically said, okay, what problem specifically do we solve for these customers? Pivoting away from that general messaging to saying something like a real-time survey tool so that you can get feedback from customers, staff, and live event attendees.
Nice. So specific.
Yeah, I mean, we did later get even more specific, but the increase in conversion rate when we did that was significant. It was, at least a couple of percent. I forget the actual number here, but what it shows is that responding to a pain point directly with your landing pages, for example, is a strong way to increase demand. The kind of later stage companies, what we find there is that many people will build entire marketing organizations based around volume in search in particular.
Right.
So let's say you're a legal case management tool. You've got a SaaS that basically helps law firms manage their cases. Pretty big market. There's a lot of law cases. Now, one way that you could go about finding customers for that with search would be to target high volume search keywords. So I'm guessing here, by the way, I can't give you any specifics because I don't have a direct link from Google, but I'm guessing that high volume keywords for that would be things like manage legal cases, or maybe digitize legal processes. Those kinds of things are really high volume, right? Now, when we think about building out demand using content, the more efficient thing to do is to say, okay, well, look, let's go back all the way to that foundational phase of, hey, my customers have pain points. What are they? I know them clearly. How would I express those pain points as search queries? So for a lawyer, it might be how do I digitize my processes, my law processes, or something like that.
Right.
And you would take those things and say, okay, well, look, I've got the answers to these things. Why don't I just start writing articles about those things versus trying to compete for the high volume, high competition keywords, right? Two benefits there. Firstly, you're going to rank better because there's fewer people competing for those really long tail keywords. Yeah. But secondly, businesses like that don't need a huge number of customers in order to grow very big.
Yeah.
So because the average contract size on accounts like that is going to be huge, you need like not many of them to build a significant business.
Yeah.
So you can totally afford to go after keywords that the keyword tools like Ahrefs or SEMrush or Moz or whatever it is don't even show keyword volume for, because so few people actually search for them every month. But when they do, they want to solve their problem right then and there. So they're going to sign up for a demo or request a trial or whatever it is.
I really like that, Mark, because one of the things was what you mentioned was be specific with your messaging, which I really liked, because I think I've often made that mistake in the past. Talk about save time, be 100 times productive, which, can be what pretty much every product would say they would do. And even targeting those search queries, right? We look at, okay, what search the most? I'm going to address that, but you don't know is you're competing with so many people. I really like that advice because it's very specific in itself. What kind of strategies have you used in the past that you were so sure it was going to work, but didn't? Again, we can, tackle the various, companies that you're part of.
For sure. Well, look, let's talk about a case that I worked on. So at an early stage company, I thought that it would be great if we could work on getting sales calls with people directly through email, right? So cold outreach, effectively.
Right.
Cold outreach should 100% work in the survey industry, for example, because not that many people are trying to do it. Customers don't necessarily, they're not necessarily ready to buy, but they might want to take a demo, which is a great opportunity to do cold outreach. There's also a whole bunch of people, like, because the product could be used for pretty much anyone, you basically say, okay, well, let's try this industry first, then we'll move to this industry and that, and you can kind of go across the board.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, I'm going to basically put people into a drip-fed campaign which targets our value props. Now, we created a way that we could feed, sorry if this is a bit technical, but we could basically feed variables from the Google Sheet that I was using to manage all the campaigns, right, into an email, which is great, but then also feed them into a link which would generate basically a custom landing page for every person who received the campaign. So what worked in that campaign was the custom landing pages. So when people click through to those things, they saw their logo, they saw their name on the website, and they also saw, maybe, I can't remember, maybe a picture of how the survey would look if you applied their branding. I can't remember exactly what we did, but that really worked. People who did click through loved it, and they booked demos and things like that.
Okay.
What didn't work was when I tried the similar thing, but with sending when people weren't responding to the first, say, 1 or 2 emails, I sent them a picture of myself with their name like fake tattooed to my arm in a font that was so obviously a fake, right?
Yeah.
While some people absolutely laughed, they thought that was hilarious. It didn't get us any demos at all, and in fact, it did alienate quite a lot of people.
Right.
So I thought to myself, there's a lot of reasons this could work. There are so many people who could use this product. Maybe we just break through with some humor. In reality, those people just did not care. And were also a little bit annoyed at having photos of my bicep sent to them. So that's a bad thing. I think some other things that I have tried that didn't work, long form sales pages for SaaS.
Okay.
So I don't know if you've ever come across kind of like one of those courses that people will sell, like a kind of, grow your business in 10 days or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I had a theory that those things, like those direct response sales pages, do work, right? People sign up for those things all the time. And I thought to myself, we could just test one of these, right? So we had a page that was converting from website visitor to trial sign up at a rate of like 12-14%, something like that. Pretty good.
Okay.
And then I thought, okay, let's A/B test this. So we'll send half the visitors to that page that's already converting well, and we'll send half the visitors to this other page. Now the message on that page, this long form page, was basically 2020 is the worst year of your life because everything is crumbling. Stay in touch with your customers, your employees with real-time surveys. Now, that was it was a long form page. It would have been a sales pitch if we had been in person. I thought this is gonna absolutely kill it. We're gonna convert so many people with this. It converted at less than 1%.
Oh no.
And I was like, oh my gosh, we've just wasted 2-3 weeks on this thing, and it converted at 0. And like, it's the reality is you have to run tests, and you have to make big swings when you're A/B testing in order to actually see anything, any benefit. You can't be the kind of company who says, hey, we've got 10,000 visitors coming to this site a month. Why don't we change the color of that button to blue versus green? It doesn't work. You just end up with false flags. However, you make these big swings. Some of them are going to absolutely bomb. 1 or 2 of them might be, flyers. You might be away and convert loads of people. So there's a couple of examples of things that I thought would definitely work that completely failed.
But on that, I noticed that, giving time to test, I think, is very important, Mark. And if you don't mind me asking about like cold outreach, I like that we've already identified, like, sending people to like customized landing pages will always get them excited because they know it's for them. But having said that, I know that cold outreach to a certain extent can be successful. And if you were to do anything different, minus the TAT, what kind of other strategies would you recommend, especially when it comes to cold outreach?
Yeah. Well, I got significantly better at it after that
Okay.
first those early campaigns. What does work? What books demos is brief emails, in my experience. So you're talking to someone, you're asking them for a couple of minutes of their attention, but people are busy, right?
Yeah.
How many cold emails do you get a day? I definitely get a lot. And they mostly bug me, but because I've been in the position of sending them, I'm usually pretty gracious and say, sorry, not for me. Not everyone is like that. So keep them short, first of all. How I recommend people do that is taking that kind of template that we discussed earlier in this recording, which basically says, hey, I've been working with X kinds of people, so similar customers, to solve pain point here, this pain point, with the solution. So with real-time surveys. So my example would be, hey, I've been working with recruitment consultants to help them get better post-placement feedback with real-time surveys, then share one result. We found that people who do this get, NPS scores that are 10% higher or whatever. Do you want to take a look? And you don't even have to put the name. You don't even have to put it just has to be brief. Give people enough so that they can just look at the first two sentences and go yes or no. Now that worked. We booked a bunch of demos from that stuff.
Nice.
Closed some deals. Very cool. However, there's a total opposite here, which basically works. My friend Amanda Natividad is really good at this. I think you had her on your show.
Yeah, I did. She was amazing.
She talks a lot about kind of really doing in-depth research into your customer. Yeah. And I fully agree with her. If you have a later stage business, it's likely that you've got to the later stage based on a high contract value. High contract value businesses tend to grow faster. They tend to achieve higher turnover. Now, that means that you need to do fewer of these cold outreach emails than someone who's selling like a $9 solution sort of thing. So you can afford to spend a lot of time researching before you reach out to the person who you're going to cold email effectively. So you go into their life effectively. You try and you stalk them online and basically work out exactly what their pain is. Now, you can listen to podcasts they've been on, read blog posts they've written, look at comments they've posted on social, all sorts of stuff, and work out, do they actually have the pain that you're solving for? If they do, then talk to them like a human, not like a salesperson. No offense to salespeople, but talk to them like, we're talking now, but in an email or a call, whatever you think is most appropriate for your audience. And that works just as well as the exact short, the short email. It's different audiences. If you're trying to sell someone, 100K plus contract value with a 2-sentence email, you're probably going to fail. If you're doing it the other way around, you're also probably going to fail with a longer email. So you have to tailor your message to the audience you're speaking to.
Thank you. I like how you addressed, both types. One, we know that they don't have a lot of time, keep it short. And when you know that the opportunity is a bit bigger, number one, obviously be human anyway, but also customize that email so you address what that person wants. So we did talk a little bit about strategies and all those things. Mark, what I'd like to talk about is, I know this is something that you've addressed in the past as well. When it comes to formulating those overall strategies in general, we obviously look at what the competition does. Sometimes what they do may or may not be the right thing, but there is someone who has sort of done half of the job. How do you look at competitor insights, and how do you apply that when you come up with demand gen strategies?
Sure. So I think the first thing to think about is how similar are these companies really? Many people will say, I'm competing, like let's say you've built a small CRM product. You are not competing with Salesforce in reality. Salesforce is gonna eat you for breakfast. They don't even know you exist, right? Now your solution to demand gen should not be the same as Salesforce's is, right? So you don't have their resource, you're not going for the same customer. Okay, so that in mind, think about, are my competitors people who are going after the same customer as me? You can cross out and remove from your research anyone who's not going for those customers, because it doesn't matter, frankly. You're just going to end up with all of these bad conclusions based on seeing what other people are doing. The second thing to remember is that just because they're doing it doesn't mean that it's working. Like, you and I, Sharif, we could be doing the same job in two different companies who are actually competing with one another. And you know that on a Monday, you might be feeling insecure about your results, right? And I might be feeling great. Now, in order to kind of try and catch up, you might go, well, what's Mark doing over at Business X that I'm not doing? And the reality is, maybe I launched something on Friday that is working briefly, but it might not going forwards, and you're just going to end up copying my strategy anyway. So there's a kind of a disclaimer. So that being said, what I always recommend people do is say, okay, look, we've whittled this number of competitors down. These people are going after our customers. What are the promises that they're making to their customers? Now, promises that they make tend to fall into a number of things, and you alluded to it earlier, but we are cheaper. We help you be more productive. We help you to save time. We help you to make more money and grow faster. Those tend to be the standard ones. But in every industry, you're going to find that there's some kind of people who make some slightly more specific ones. For example, today I was working with a company who make GPS tracking software for big fleets of transport. One of their competitors makes promises about real-time data and being able to get real-time data so that you can get better insights. Now, still a fairly bland promise when you think about it. Like, anyone can say get real-time data so that you can get better insights. It doesn't really speak to a problem. Reviewing what they're saying in their website messaging, that's a pretty start there. Then you can look at, okay, let's plug their domain names into something like Ahrefs, which will allow you to go off and do a competitor analysis. So you can do a gap analysis of the content. You can go and you can take one by one and you can say, okay, are they investing heavily in acquiring backlinks, for example? Why might they be doing that? Basically asking yourself, why are they doing this? What can I learn from what they are doing? Rather than saying, okay, they're doing backlink building, I need to do backlink building, right? Yeah. Then the other thing you can look at as well is you can look at their PPC activity. So you can either do this with Ahrefs or SEMrush or SpyFu. I think a lot of PPC people like for that. You can do it with one of those tools. Or you can just start Googling stuff that's related to your niche. So see what they're bidding on. You can also go off and look at Facebook ads library, look at their LinkedIn page and see what ads they're running directly through the page itself. You can do all this kind of stuff, right? And when you do, make a note of, what are they saying? Who are they saying it to? What kind of images are they using? What kind of offers are they giving? So an offer would be, are they telling people that they want them to sign up to use the product? Or are they saying, hey, download this lead magnet? And if they are saying that, what kind of lead magnets are they offering? Are they offering these big kind of white papers that no one ever reads? Or are they offering, a 7-point checklist, which people really do use, by the way? that's how I'd start looking at these competitors. Plug all of that into a structured sheet, like some sort of Google sheet. You can build it to your own parameters, and then say, okay, well, knowing what I know now, where do I fall? Which things do I think are a good idea to invest in? Are there any channels that people in my industry aren't invested in at all? If so, does it make sense for me to invest there? Should I play in that field, basically, just because there's no one else playing in it? To answer that question, you have to know, are your customers there?
Yeah.
Because there's no point in playing in a field if no one's around to play with you, right? But you can do that by running small structured tests to see, for example, like let's say you want to do a PPC campaign on LinkedIn because none of your competitors are doing it there. Good way to do that is to run a time limited, budget limited, work out what's acceptable for a test campaign. See what the interaction is, see what the downstream conversion rate is for when people click on your ad, do something, and then do they eventually provide ROI? You might not know that, by the way, if you time limit it too far, because in B2B, some buying cycles are much longer than others. But you should try and get as many signals as you can, as quickly as you can, with a small structured test. You take all of that stuff, run it over and over again, because competitors frequently change what they do, and you should have a good idea about demand gen. By the way, you can do the same thing with their actual products. So you click the sign up button on one of their products, see what happens. Do they send you a bunch of emails? What do they ask you to do to activate the product? If you try to cancel an account, what happens? What do they do to retain you? How do they try to upsell you? These kinds of insights are going to give you a strong direction into defining your own strategy for demand gen. Because remember, demand gen we talk about in terms of acquisition, but really what is beneficial is demand gen that leads to retention and expansion as well. So those are the kind of the three drivers really of the SaaS business model, and it is an overly narrow thing to do to think about it in terms of how do I get customers from Google. You want to say, how do I get right fit customers that are going to stick around and pay me more over time and a long time? That's how I think about that.
Thank you for walking us through those tactics, Mark. I love that we, touched on things like, finding out what is it that the competitor is promising, review what they are saying, and then, you took us through the areas that you can look at, going through like Facebook ad libraries and even referring to places like Ahrefs to find out what, what kind of gap analysis we can do when it comes to their content. And then most importantly, ask why they might be doing what they're doing, see if my customers are where they might be playing in, and see how it fits for me as well. So you raised some really good points about how expansion and retention are more important, which I feel is a great episode for another day, which I might talk to you about later on. But thank you, Mark, for taking us through all of this, not just the strategy, but also taking us through your experience and going in down to those tactics, which I think would be very helpful. So thank you for your time today and taking us through it all.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.